Alrighty, everybody. It is that time again. Retired in Korea. Yes, Steve here, the retired in Korea American expat, retired hobby guy, does 3D printing, miniature painting, cosplay stuff, dipping my toe into that. The interesting thing over here is what we're talking about is today's episode. We're going to have an episode today. We're going to talk about pig butchering scams, Trump protests in Korea, because some people have been sending me some a video talking about how bad South Korea doesn't like Trump. George pops up and says, "Hi, George. Hey, good to see you again." George he's a regular. It ends up, we're also going to look at a stabbing at a restaurant over a lottery discount ticket. That is just kind of crazy. And then we're going to talk about the Korean Ted Bundy. Yeah, that is, those are the things we're going to talk about. And it's really interesting because as I am an American expat, a person who is retired here in Korea, I mean, we're in Korea. That's all there is to it. We're in Korea. Of course, you probably can't tell from looking here, but yeah, we actually sold everything, house, cars, guns, ammo, everything in the kitchen junk drawer in the United States. Had somebody drop us off at the airport, and the wife and I had a couple of suitcases, and boom, we ended up here in South Korea, which isn't a normal retirement destination for retirees. Korea is not known as being retirement visa friendly. It's not like Thailand, it's not like Philippines, it's not like, some other countries where, you only got to make like $1,000 a month, or they have a retirement visa or pensionado visa like Puerto Rico or maybe Costa Rica. Yeah, it's really rare. And the fact that their retirement visa here in Korea is you have to invest something like $250 or I think $500,000 into a business. And then you have an income level that you have to maintain and so on and so forth. So that's really high. And so you don't see a lot of people doing that. So am I one of those people? Am I one of those hoity-toity people that are rich and famous and not decided to bless my presence among you commoners? No, that's not it at all. There's no way I would be able to come anywhere near close to making that amount of money in my life. The reason we were able to do it is because my wife was a Korean national. We got married. She's awesome. We've been together just over 35 years now. Only feels like about 15, maybe 17 years. So I think that's a good thing. I had a buddy in the Army. I remember at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, we were sitting around and jaw-jacking and talking about how many years we had been married. And I remember him saying, "Yeah, man, it feels like forever." And it's like, we're looking over at this guy and it's like, he's still wet behind the ears. He'd only been married 2 years. So it was like 15 years. It's like, yeah, I don't, dude's probably not married now. That's all I'm going to say. But with that, coming over here to Korea has been really, really good for us because it allowed us to retire early. My wife was a Korean national, and so we found a visa that would enable her to get a visa to be a long-term visa here in Korea. And then being her spouse, I was able to get one as well. And so that's kind of a thing. So, the regular retirement visas, yeah, I haven't met anybody that meets those requirements because it talks about, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And so when I see videos of people that say, "Oh, you can retire in Korea," and it's like, really? How did you retire? What is your visa? And then there's people that say they retire in Korea, but really what they're doing is they have an educational visa, or they have they have an educational visa, and it's not, you're not retired because, it's semantics matter, definitions matter is what I'm saying. George pops up and says, "I miss living in Clarksville, Tennessee, which is close to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, except for I-40. They're still probably working on that main highway there. The whole time I was there, it was nothing but constant construction. And, it was I don't know. I kind of liked it. That was our first home that we bought was in Clarksville, Tennessee. Actually, our house, I can't remember the name of the street. I want to say it was Newman Drive, but it was a new subdivision. We bought a house. It was like $60,000. We were so nervous, and signing the paper, I was shaking. It was like that was the most. I thought that was a huge amount of money. Yeah, it wasn't. But for me at the time, it was. And our house was at the end of a block, and the field next to us was a farm, and a farmer down there had horses, and we had a couple of apple trees and stuff, and so the guy and his horse would come up, and he would tell us about the history of. He was kind of an older guy of the neighborhood, and how somebody had owned this land and they sold it and whatever. And so we would ride his horse, and the horse would get to eat our apples, and so it was kind of a fun thing. When I was there, a lot of deployments, so I don't miss that. But let's jump into the RIK, the retired in Korea, and we'll talk about pig butchering. And you're probably thinking, pig butchering? Raise a pig, have some bacon, do some sausage, No, that's not what we're talking about here. So let's jump into this. Romance scams take hold in Korea. So yeah, this ends up, the pig butchering thing is kind of interesting. Perpetrators spend hours building rapport and emotional trust. That's why victims fall for them. And there's a little thing. You got the scammer. You got the woman. It's usually a woman. South Korea is facing a huge surge in romance scams that are increasingly intertwined with cryptocurrency investment fraud, costing victims more than $70 million so far this year, while the arrest rate remains below 50%. Yeah, I can tell you right now that it ends up the amount of text that I get for crypto scams, or hey honey, I saw you online the other day, I really like to meet, or whatever, something similar. Would you like to meet for coffee? Or I saw you look really handsome, and blah, blah, blah. All of those are scams. And then there's always a link. And that's how they get you. There's so many things here in Korea that they warn you about. Do not click links of, people that you don't know, or because there's so many scams. They'll pretend to be immigration, they'll pretend to be from your bank, from your work, or usually it's banking related, or maybe it's your coupon account, your shopping account has been compromised. Click this link and we'll be able to fix it. Otherwise, you're going to lose 1,000,000 won. Somebody purchased millions of dollars worth of whatever, millions of won off your account. Don't ever do that. Yeah, it's the safest thing to do. If you get a text from the bank that says, "Oh, your bank is compromised," you had an unauthorized withdrawal of $5,000 or whatever, don't click the link. Just go contact your bank, and you'll find out 99.999% of the time the bank didn't send that, because that's not how they do business. Same with the romance scams and so on and so forth. The arrest rate is pretty low. It's not good. According to the data of the Democratic Party lawmaker, National Police Agency, there were 1,565 reported romance scam cases from January to September 25, with the total losses rising 48% from last year. Rising from 48% last year. Despite the increase, suspects have been apprehended in only 46.9% of the cases, up from 12.7% the previous year. Romance scams, which exploit emotional relationships built online, have become more elaborate by combining fake cryptocurrency investments. I get a lot of those. I definitely get a lot of those. Hold on a second. I want to fix something here. Because I'm not really centered. There we go. Now I feel better. My ADHD. So a method where fraudsters fatten up their victims with false affections, small initial profits before butchering, before a large-scale financial loss. Criminals contact victims through social media or dating apps, maintain daily conversation to build intimacy and trust, and then introduce investment platforms that display fabricated returns. Once victims invest substantial amounts or try to withdraw funds, the platforms disappear, and they're ghosted. Yeah. It's romance scams once relied heavily on perpetrators posing as foreigners, such as doctors stationed overseas, soldiers on peacekeeping missions, or professional workers in finance. It's a little rough. They approach Korean victims through social media and dating apps, planning a trip to Korea or inherited a fortune. You ever get all of those? Scammers are getting worse, according to George, and they are. You're absolutely right. Stream is getting a little dark. You talking figuratively or literally? On my end, it looks okay. But yeah, it's so many of these scams have popped up. And what's interesting is that a lot of these, from what I've seen in the news, is that there's this big thing going on in Cambodia, Vietnam, Cambodia. There was one other country where a lot of these online scammers reside in these countries. And like, for example, Cambodia, they will entice Koreans to come to Cambodia to say, and we talked about this on a previous stream, you're going to get a job for up to $5,000 to $10,000 a month. And it's like, if you have some minor experience in computers or just knowledge of computers, and Koreans fall for it. It's like, wouldn't a red flag go up when somebody is offering you a job for like minimal qualifications, and the average salary of the average Cambodian is around $250 to $300 a month, but they're offering you $5,000 to $10,000 a month, or be an entertainer or, work in this industry or whatever. So they capture these Koreans and they force them, they'll torture them, they'll electrocute them, they'll do all these things, and they'll force them to make phone calls because they speak Korean, to get involved in these scams. And, eventually they have to buy their way out of, this said slavery that they're in. And if you make us this much money, then we'll let you go. And of course, that rarely happens, Who would think that thieves would lie? And they just use them and sell them. They'll sell the people to other organizations that do scams and so on and so forth. So yeah, there really is, it truly is a crazy thing. But a lot of these are centered not in Korea themselves, but other foreign countries. So yeah, it is really, really, really pretty wild. The schemes primarily targeted English-speaking Koreans, use foreign profiles, stolen photos, request money under the pretense of travel or custom fees or emergencies, and operations have grown more sophisticated and localized, with organized crime groups in Southeast Asia hiring fluent Korean speakers. Many scammers now impersonate Koreans, adopting realistic names, accents, even Korean social habits to avoid suspicion. One notable case, a Korean couple believed to be behind a 12 billion won pig butchering network, was arrested in Cambodia earlier this year, prompting Seoul to formally request their extradition. I don't know. I would just probably leave them to Cambodia and let them rot in Cambodia. I don't know. The recent Cambodia case exposed how these networks recruit and train local Koreans to run large-scale online fraud rings targeting victims back home. Experts warn that artificial intelligence tools are amplifying the threat. Deepfake videos and doctored IDs have been used to impersonate actors, soldiers, business executives. In one recent case, a woman in her 50s lost 5 billion won to scammers who used AI-generated photos and videos of famous Korean celebrity. Yeah, deepfake videos. And there are laws in Korea about deepfake videos where doing this is a crime and distributing it is a crime. And let's see what 5 billion, how much that is. That's 5 million. That's 5 billion. And we'll divide that by about 1420 is around the exchange rate. So we're talking $3.5 million. Holy crow. So somebody scammed this woman as this Korean celebrity made some deep fake videos, which is so easy to do. Oh, I love you. Here's a video of me. Hi, Miss So and So. They have the text, they have the video. It all looks so real these days. It is absolutely insane. And so, this woman in her 50s thinks, oh, I've got this young stud, this celebrity that's interested in me, and it carried on these conversations. Oh, he loves me, but he needs money. And that's how it goes, and once you're hooked, you are hooked. And it is, I've seen the exact same thing working in prisons. Now, for those of you who don't know, I worked in prisons for over 15 years in a couple of facilities in Colorado. One of them was in Territorial Correctional Facility, which was a prison before Colorado was even a state. Yeah, that's how old it was, and it's pretty damn old. And then I worked at Fremont Correctional Facility in the state of Colorado, and I got to be up close and personal with inmates because I had an inmate working crew. Of course, I also did the guard thing, but then I got into maintenance electronics, and I had inmates that worked for me, and going around to all the different cell houses. And of course, I did, emergent entries, because you're not just an electronics guy, you're a guard as well, and when emergencies happen, they use you. I've done strip outs on inmates. Oh, that just yucky. Try stripping out 500 people. It's not fun. Anyway, I got to know some inmates. Good ones, bad ones. I mean, they're all there for bad reasons and choices that they did. But I had seen guys that had done romance scams writing letters. And these women were sending these male inmates money every single month like clockwork. And the letters that they would write, holy crow, it was incredible. The amount of rapport and the Rico suaviness of their letters was just like, that almost made me want to give them money. It was just, holy crow, dude, this is incredible. I mean, it is a talent. And then this guy, he had like 20 women that were sending him money. He didn't have anybody on the outside to send him money. And so he did this romance scam and then, write inmates letters or whatever in church groups, they would get involved and they get, letters going back and forth, which probably about 99% of the problems of where people are compromised, whether it's civilians or staff, are women. Because it is, women are the weak ones in that aspect. Because these inmates will just write these letters like nobody's business. And like this one guy, he had like 20 women, and he kept a notebook on each woman, how to profile, what they talked about, and he would keep his little log. And they're sending him, 50, maybe $100, $150 a month into his commissary account. And he was living large. If you get $50 a month in prison, you're sitting pretty, but he was making bank. And he never told me how much he was making, but he had the newest tennis shoes, he had the new TV, everything. He was not, his Foot Locker was always full of food. And of course, he's making money being a store and stuff like that. It was amazing on how romance scams work. And I've even seen female staff in prisons get compromised. People that I knew for years get compromised and doing things, bringing money in, bringing food in. Next thing you know, they're having relations with inmates, and then it's like, well, once you're compromised, then you got to bring me in a cell phone. Well, if you don't bring in what I want, I'm just gonna say that you forced your way upon me. So then the blackmail starts coming in, and so it is absolutely crazy. But anyway, I digress. The romance scams are pretty wild. It is pretty incredible. Beyond romance, crypto scammers have fake courier companies demanding customs fees for non-existent packages, which has happened to me. That has happened to me. I didn't fall for it because I order stuff online and it ends up, it's like, sometimes there's customs fees. So for people that are wondering, because I live in Korea, I can order from Amazon or some other sites, and it takes about a week, 2 weeks to get items in. But on certain dollar amounts, I might have to pay an import fee or customs fee, or if something is over a certain amount. And I had ordered some stuff, and then I got this text saying, "Hey, there's customs, blah blah blah. You need to pay a fee." But there was something off. There was just something off about the text, and there was a link in there, and it was like, usually it's pay the price, and you pay the customs fee, and you don't have to worry about it. There's a few times where I've had to pay an import fee after the fact, but in this case, it was just like something was different, something was odd, and so I went back to the site, the app that I used to order, contacted the seller and said, "Hey, I just got a text saying that I needed to pay an import fee," and they were like, "Really? No, we didn't send you a text, and can you copy it and forward it to us and whatever?" So I did a screenshot, I sent it to them. They're like, "Oh yeah, don't click that. Whatever you do, don't click that." So yeah, it is. We're not talking about stuff that, people talking about stuff that they have no clue or experience at. I have actually experienced that on a number of occasions. So pretty much anything I get online in regards to having to pay money, don't click it. Don't do anything with those. Just contact the seller, contact the original person. If it says that it's your bank and you need to click this link to certify or recertify, or somebody had gained illegal access, so click this link so you can redo your password or whatever, just don't. Just go to the bank, contact them and say, "Hey, I got this text," and they'll tell you, "Yeah, that's not us." So whatever you do, don't click unknown links, or even links that might seem like they should be known to you. Always just go back to the source. If the bank says that they're going to close your account, just go to your bank. Don't click any links. Always go back to the source. So yeah, a lot of crazy stuff goes on. Let's see, what else do we got? Manipulation. Lawmakers are calling for stronger international cooperation for this. Romance scams are no longer isolated crimes; they're transnational, AI-driven operations. They've gained momentum around 2020, prompting South Korean authorities to formally track losses every year. According to the police data, there were 1,265 reported cases totaling 65 billion won from February to December 2024. In just the first 7 months of 2025, this is how prevalent it is, another 1,163 cases were recorded with damages reaching over 70 billion won. So combined, that amounts to 2,428 cases in less than 18 months. So for those of you who are thinking about coming here to Korea and doing what we did, you have a Korean spouse, somebody has Korean ancestry, or even if you're on an educational visa or work stay, digital nomad, whatever it is, be very careful. Be very careful on links and texting and what you do online with your phone, because everything is tied to your phone, and you got your banking apps, you got all that, your identity, which comes from your passport, and everything is tied to your phone here in Korea. So there are places to where if you click a link, it's not going to take you, it's going to actually you're giving access to that person to your phone, and people have like empty bank accounts. Of people who have clicked on links, and because they're able to track and monitor what you do, and so they can see when you log in, and they can see that your PIN, and then they clone your phone, and then boom, your money's gone. Yeah, it is very, very crazy. So anyway, some very pig butchering, romance scams, scandals, all of that online stuff, and now with AI, this stuff is getting really, really bad, because now you can make videos with audio of your favorite celebrity and say, "Hey, and start doing a little conversation. Oh, I want to, I thought you're a really neat person. I saw you," and they start chatting and stuff, and then they'll, under the guise of, "Well, I just keep this a secret between you and me because, we had some conversations. I really like you, but I'm a celebrity," and then that's where the videos come in, the deepfake videos. And then it's like, so for some lady who doesn't get any affection, and is faced with this secret relationship that has initially been texted, and it's like, hey, I really like you, and so on and so forth. But hey, this has got to be a secret between us because this is who I am. Enter the Korean deepfake, video of said celebrity or politician or doctor, whatever. I can't do this, out in the open, but this is just between us. But I had to share this with you because I deeply care for you. And then they're hooked, it just, that's how it goes. Another thing we're going to talk about, people have been sending me some stuff on Trump protests. But before we get into that, we got some other ones. Sparky, good morning, Steve. Some good advice as scammers are everywhere. Yeah, and the deepfake videos make it even worse. Sultan, welcome back. A chilly but gorgeous sunny good morning. Yes, it is chilly here. As a matter of fact, what is the temperature? It's 28 October, and I don't know. What is the temperature right now? It is really cool. Let's see. A little quick temperature check. And we are popping up with 38 degrees. It is chilly. It is going to be chilly. The high is going to be 56 degrees today. And then we'll get 60s, kind of 50s and maybe some 60s through the next 10 days or so. But yeah, low temperatures are getting into the 30s. And we're dipping down into almost freezing levels. So throw in a little bit of wind, we'll get some freeze. But it is nice now. And I kind of like that weather around the 55, 60 degree weather. Ferrithus pops in, says, hey, good morning. Good morning, sir. Welcome back. Sparky says, getting cold here in Seoul. Oh, you're in Seoul. Okay, cool. Figuratively and literally, yes, it is getting cold. Matter of fact, when we went on my birthday, we went to Sokcho. And we were going to go up to Soraksan, but it ended up getting snow, and it was all socked in. It was raining. You couldn't see the mountains, and so it's like we kind of just sat in our Airbnb, and it was kind of a wash for the birthday. But we got out of the house, and we picked up some fresh brewed coffee beans, so that was a bonus. A little bit expensive. 3-hour drive there, 3-hour drive back. But it was good to get out. But yeah, the cold weather's coming in, and it seems like it was summer, few days of fall, and then boom, we're heading straight into cold weather. So we're having a really short fall. With that being said, the ginkgo trees, we're going to try to hit the ginkgo trees. There's an area where there's this walk next to a river or whatever, a well-known tourist destination for seeing the ginkgo trees turn yellow. And it is pretty amazing. Let me see if I can find a picture of that where we did that. And let's see if we can find that. Here it is. So there we have the ginkgo trees and that street. And that street right there is actually, the ginkgo trees aren't even fully yellow, but they'll get into the yellow. You can see they get a little bit orange, and you go there, and then when the wind blows and the leaves start to fall, it's like, oh, it is so gorgeous. It is beautiful. Just incredible. Let's see if we get another picture. Here's another one. So yeah, it is just a fantastic, it is really a fantastic place to go. So we really enjoyed it. And we're going to go back this year, and you got to time it right. If you don't get the timing right, you'll get there when it's green, or you get there and all the leaves are gone. And so we're going to try to look at maybe first or second week of November as people are starting to think on, when the timing. But we got this cold snap, so maybe it'll be a little bit sooner. Sparky says, love the fall colors. I know, like we were driving around and you start getting like the reds, the rich reds, the deep reds, kind of the gold, those rustic colors and things like that here in Korea. Looks really, really awesome. And this year, I think we're going to have a limited amount of time of that. So But with that, with the weather still being sort of okay, we're getting protests. And a number of people have sent me this one video from Reuters talking about all the protests of Trump. Now, I'm an independent, so let's not do the left versus right in whatever thing. I'm just going to give you my experience. A number of people have asked me, well, is this true on this video? And are there so many, people are telling me that there's so many protests for Trump in Korea, it's not even funny. And I'm like, in my experience, I'm going to tell you based on my experience. But with that, let's go ahead and take a look, and I'll show you the video clip that I've had like 8 people send me this. So here is the video.
Especially with the APEC summit coming up next week, President Trump visiting, and important meetings like the South Korea-US summit or a potential North Korea-US summit on the agenda, I came out here today to strongly convey the anger of South Korean citizens from the very start.
So yeah, that is the video that I've been getting. And this is from the Progressive Party of South Korea. In my experience, I have seen anti-Trump protests here in Korea. They're very rare. They're very few. I have seen way more pro-Trump demonstrations and rallies than the anti-Trump ones. And matter of fact, and because I'm at a U.S. military base, maybe that's because of that. But I also check the news, the Korean news, and so on and so forth. There seems to be more pro-Trump rallies than anti-Trump rallies here in Korea. And it's very, very rare to see an anti-Trump demonstration. So for the people that have sent me messages and emails and saying, hey, is it really true that there are so many anti-Trump protests in Korea? The thing is about protests, you'll see protesters protesting anything and everything. And some things are just absolutely crazy. Some things are like, the amount of, we need to have green energy or whatever. Or crazy stuff that is like, you guys are wackadoos and it has nothing to do with the problems at hand you should be more concerned about. But again, Korea does allow for protesting or demonstrations within their constitution. The thing is that as a foreigner, I cannot legally participate in any demonstrations because that is illegal. So they have a law on that. But with that being said, in my experience, based on watching news, actually seeing a number of pro-Trump demonstrations or rallies, especially close to the military base where I live, which is the largest U.S. military base, overseas base in the world for the United States, there are way more pro-Trump rallies than anti-Trump. So it's interesting. And, I can kind of understand when we're talking about this because, this Progressive Party of South Korea, and usually the interesting thing is this talking about this is robbery, not negotiation. This is in regards to Trump wanting Korea to basically write a blank check, give it to the United States for $350 billion as an investment in the United States. Of course, Korea will get some stuff out of that. But that's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. And it's almost like the current administration in the United States is saying, well, you're gonna write this check and we will determine where it's going to go within the United States. That doesn't really sit well with me. Now, again, like I said, I'm an independent, so I like things from both sides as long as they make sense. That's kind of how I roll. But with this thing that the current administration is going on, just trying to push and force this $350 million deal as invest in the United States, Korea's only got 50 million people. The United States has like 325, 330 million people. You look at how much money the Korean government has, the economy's not doing real well. We're in a recession. The exchange rate is 14 1420, 1430, 1440 the other day. It is really getting a pounding. So it's not doing well at all. Remember back in 1997, the IMF came up and said, hey, they had to bail out South Korea, and the exchange rate was about 1,500 won. Not that that was the only reason for the IMF bailout, but we're not in a good position here to Korea. And so for the United States to come and say, hey, we want a blank check for $350 billion, and you don't really have a say on where it goes or so on and so forth, that doesn't rub me the right way. Doesn't give me a warm fuzzy. Sultan pops in and says, I love how South Korea manages to be so lush with trees, yet still incredibly convenient in cities, and how the whole landscape transforms with each of the four seasons. It's heaven, at least for me. Yeah, and especially the newer areas where they have, like you said, that combination of cities, but they also have trees and greenery and so on and so forth. The planned, the more recent cities and things like that are really, really nice. So it's just really, I really like that. The walkability of cities and so on and so forth. It is really, really interesting. So I like it. But this fall is definitely going to be a short fall period. So, but back to the demonstrations and stuff like that. Personally, and this is the Progressive Party of South Korea, which is kind of a left-leaning. They, just to give you kind of some idea of some of the stuff that they believe in, again, anybody can protest for anything, and you get some people that are really, really interesting. However, this Progressive Party of South Korea believes that that the rich people should pay a 90% inheritance tax. Yeah, I can't. That's robbery. That is robbery right there. So I just thought it was interesting in how they're saying Trump in this negotiation for this $350 billion being invested into the United States and all that stuff is wrong because it's robbery. But then their own party says that the elitists should have to pay a 90% inheritance tax. So they believe in was it monetary equality and so on and so forth, but it's always taking away from the rich. But 90%? Holy crow. We've seen this played out in other places, and people that are the elitist and that are super rich, if this ever gets enacted, those people are going to leave your country. And it could be that they leave the country and take the jobs with them and their company and the revenue and the whole 9 yards. So I just find that very problematic. So anyway, Ferrithus says, Trump needs to prop up the economy somehow. Promises these investments seem to be doing the trick. So that's what he's pushing for. Yeah, and I get it. And he is making money from an independent point of view and seeing, getting rid of the fraud, the waste, and the abuse, getting back, running it like a business. I can see that. There's things that I don't like about Trump. So, but then again, I don't agree with everybody on 100%. To give you a clue, I don't even agree with my wife on everything she says. And we've been together 35 years. So there's that. But I understand as a president, whether it's Trump or not, the president is supposed to do good for their citizens and their country. Korea is going to be doing things supposedly that is good for their citizens and their country. And some of those things might not line up with other countries when they come together and do these things. So, you're going to get some people that are going to be protesting and as their right here in Korea. And I'm totally supportive of that. But the devil is in the details. And so when you look at these people that are protesting and see the background of what they have and what they believe, then it's like, whoa, that's extreme. Because then it's a slippery slope. Let's say they get into power and they do enact that 90% inheritance tax, and then all the rich people leave, and then it's like, okay, well, the elitists, say the top 5%, those people left. So now the bar is lowered, and so now we're going to tax those people, and then those people leave, and so the sliding scale is like, well, how much is too much, and when is it ever going to stop? But the problem is, I think, is that these people are stuck on this. This is the only way to fix the problem, and there are other ways of doing it. So, for example, on free healthcare, I am all for free healthcare, besides the fact that it's not free. It cannot be free unless you have indentured servitude of doctors and nurses, administrators, working in slavery. They have to get paid. So healthcare cannot be free. So that's that's just not a thing. But with that, like I said in previous videos, I think the United States should have free healthcare, but who's going to pay for it? So you do a tariff for healthcare, boom, people in the United States, living in the United States, don't have to pay for healthcare because it's a tax on goods and services coming into the United States, boom, problem solved. Same thing with Social Security. Social Security is dependent upon the number of people that are putting into the program to support the people that are on Social Security. And we have this upside down pyramid. So instead of raising the taxes on the rich, which wouldn't be able to fund it anyway for an extended period of time, just do a tariff. Because we are a consumer nation, and regardless of our population, we are one of the top consumers in the world. So stuff coming into the United States, you could fund Social Security and probably give people a living wage on Social Security, so you don't have poor seniors that can't even survive or live by doing the tariff thing. Anyway. Veritha says, getting rid of waste and abuse. Not really. Even their own agency for that Doge didn't really find anything that even considered a drop in the barrel. And there's something to be said for that. The amount of money that they found that is through fraud, waste, and abuse, compared to the overall debt that we have, which is like, 30 some odd trillion dollars? Yeah, it pales in comparison. But if we take that down to a micro level, kind of like our own household budget, if you're spending on things that aren't related to the important things like food, housing, security, so on and so forth, paying your taxes or whatever in your home budget, food, all of that stuff, and then instead you're spending a bunch of money on non-essentials, that's going to put you into debt. But the problem is the United States government is spending so much that it's going deeper and deeper in debt, and nobody is trying to balance the budget. And it's impossible now with the level of debt we have. It is physically impossible to pay off the U.S. debt, whether it's right or left or independent in the middle or whatever extreme that you're talking about. But yeah, it is a drop in the barrel. But let's take that into my household budget. We look at our budget, and sometimes I spend more money than I should, and it's like, you spend $50 and $75 here, $100 there, whatever, and it's more than what we agreed to on the budget. Do we just throw up our hands and say no? No, we need to reel in that non-essential spending if we want to reach certain financial goals. So even though it's a small amount, it might be a drop in the bucket, $10, $15 a month, who cares? It makes up a difference because do I really need it? Or can I use it and invest it and make more money and to help me hit retirement over 10, 20 years or whatever? So again, it's a very nuanced thing, but I get your point though. It is a drop in the bucket, but how many times are we just going to let the drops collect? And the interesting thing is I don't like looking at things from a left or right perspective. I like looking at things like the Government Accounting Office and their reports because they're a little bit less biased, and you kind of get a bigger picture on what's going on. And there's a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse in our government. I mean, holy crow. There's no doubting that. And the interesting thing, for those of you who care or don't, I don't, I grew up, I wasn't really anything. And then I was a Democrat. And being in the military as a Democrat way back in the 80s and so on and so forth, I was a Democrat. And then I became a Republican. And then now I'm an independent. So, but drastically, there have been changes in all of those areas. And, what was considered a Democrat back in the 60s, 70s is way different than what a Democrat is today. It's almost like polar opposites. And the same thing, there's been changes in the Republican side of the House as well. So it's like, that's why I'm an independent now, and let's do some common sense stuff. And if I can't take what the government is doing and bringing it down to like my household budget, it's just not a thing. Let's see. Fairtha says, rich people don't leave. They can already go wherever they want, but they aren't because they want to be there. I think the rich will leave if we tax them is an illusion. Actually, we do see that foreign or American companies that were based in the United States that have businesses shifted their companies and entire things for overseas operations, which really took manufacturing out of the United States. The United States used to be an economic powerhouse because of the manufacturing that we did in the United States. So something drove those people out. And while rich people, they don't leave because, and maybe I misspoken that, my intent was to say that the companies leave and they shift their operations overseas. And so those jobs go away. That manufacturing goes away. It is, and again, there's so many different variables, but it's just rough. It's just rough on that. There's a lot of people who are rich in the United States where, they don't leave the United States saying that they go get another citizenship or whatever, but they'll move overseas and they'll move their operations and their entire business over to other countries, and they'll employ some other country's people, and they'll get tax benefits for that. If you look back, and this was really interesting when I really dug into this, a lot of these businesses that left the United States and manufacturing and so on and so forth, they couldn't make it in the United States, and it became a deterrent for them because of the high taxes that they're like, hey, it's not viable for us. And so they went outside and did their manufacturing or parting or whatever it is overseas to offset that so they could remain profitable. So, the people, I had family members that were CPAs that worked with medium-sized companies. And medium-sized companies, if you know what that means, those are some big companies. They're bigger than what you would think. And we're not talking like mom and pop grocery stores and something. We're talking about, medium-sized companies that have hundreds, sometimes even thousands of people. And the tax considerations do come into play. So maybe that's, I don't know, maybe I'm not saying it's that's every single instance. But from what I've seen in the experience and what I've seen in the past of being a manufacturing powerhouse to where we're really not, then what drove those companies to go overseas to get, some of the things is taxes. It might not be the main reason, but I think there is. Fairtha says, the new budget just cut taxes on big corporations and rich people and exploded the deficit spending. How is trying to balance the budget? That's direct wealth transfer up. Yeah, and there is, hey, sweetie. Hi. Is it fun? Mm-hmm. Good. I'm making a video. Okay. So, anyway, where were we at? The new budget just cut taxes on big corporations and rich people and exploded the deficit spending. How is that trying to balance the budget? That's direct wealth transfer up. I haven't seen balancing a budget on either side. And the fact here's the thing that bothers me about all this is with the budget and the government, especially with the government shutdown. I've been involved in 3 of them. Is it 3? I think it was 3 while I was in the military, that the government shut down, we didn't get paid, all of that crazy stuff. The fact, consider it like what I said in a previous video, if I have my home budget and I have my rent or mortgage, my utilities, my groceries, other necessity items within my budget, and my wife and I are talking about the budget, and then there's some crazy spending going on both just don't throw up our hands and say, oh, well, we're not going to pay anything. We're not going to make a budget because, we have this crazy spending over here and one person thinks this and the other person thinks this. As responsible and mature adults, we realize that the necessities need to get paid regardless. So we need to look at the discretionary spending and the thing that might be out of whack that isn't those necessary items. We don't just not pay. It's insane. And why does our government operate like that? How in the world can you hire people to work for the government, have government jobs, promise and say, hey, well, you need to do this, this, and this as a job, and we will pay you this said amount of money, but because we can't agree on a budget or pay the necessities, we're just not going to pay anybody. That is political blackmail, whether it's left or right or in the center or whatever. It's absolutely crazy. Saying that we can't have a budget, I think the thing that bothers me is we need a military. We need, certain things that should be designated as necessary items that should be paid whether you agree on the budget or not. Why isn't it those necessary items not getting paid? It's because the politicians on both sides have become corrupt, and so they use it as a bargaining blackmail chip. Whoever's in charge and whoever's not in charge or in control or whatever, it flips back and forth because we have a two-party system, which is messed up to begin with. It could be a long video. It is just, that doesn't make sense to me. But there is a point of saying that, like what Ferrithus is saying, is a direct wealth transfer up. With that, the transfer up, but if the corporation that employs tens of thousands of people, you're getting tax revenue from that. So even though the corporation itself is getting tax write-offs, they're able to employ more people because they're getting a discount, basically. I can understand that side as well. But there is, I do concede that there is a transfer of wealth going up. And what's even worse is the corruption on the correct politicians. On both sides, you're getting kickbacks from lobbyists and this and donors from, if you make legislation that is, in line with our goals, that is not necessarily in line with is good for the United States. We've seen that for decades. So, that is a transfer of wealth up. It's corrupt as the day is long. Let's see. Ferrithus says, under the last two Democrat administrations, the annual deficit shrunk. Every time a Republican administration, the deficit has grown in the past administrations. It's not magic. And that's true. That is absolutely true. If you look at some of the Republicans that have come in, but then they're also been fraught with wars, that is a huge funding issue right there. And so, it's like, wait a second, it is a very complex thing. So, it is, it's not magic. Republican administrations generally have more wars than the Democrat side. But then again, the Democrats also have their great thing. Obama has, he actually, when we're talking about immigration, he has thrown out way more people than Trump ever will for illegal immigration, and that nobody batted an eye. And then people totally flip-flop. What they said that they believed once is now totally opposite of what politicians say that they believe today. So, you cannot balance the budget by cutting a little bit and giving tax breaks. You can only do that by increasing revenue. That's increasing taxes. And that's true. You can increase taxes. But there's other ways that you can generate income, and I think that's through tariffs. By goods and services that are coming into the United States. So that's another tax revenue. The other thing that could bring in revenue is how you invest that money. And so being involved in investment real estate and having a number of rental properties that we had deposits. You can't spend the deposit money for a rental property. It has to go into a bank account, at least in Colorado. By law, it has to go into a bank. And you can make interest off of that money. The problem is with the United States government, when we have this big influx of money, corrupt politicians on both sides will take that money and won't allow it to make interest, and it gets pocketed to somebody to somewhere, and it's not added to as an income stream. So yeah, both sides are to blame on that. It's just increasing taxes is indeed one way that you can raise revenue, but it's not the only way. And that's the problem that I have. The whole thing with Social Security and people saying, we have to raise taxes on Social Security, otherwise it's going to go insolvent. Have a tariff, you could fund Social Security forever, and it would never go down. You could actually give raises on that. There's proponents of having a flat tax. Getting rid of the IRS and just doing a flat tax, you could really reduce the amount of the IRS that you have and all of the people there. And by doing a flat tax, and the numbers are, when you look at the projections of it, it makes total sense. And it's not a left thing or a right thing. It's more of a common sense thing. Fair tax or flat tax. But you'll never see that. It's something that I would do in my own personal budget. But yeah, you'll never see that in the United States because it can't be manipulated. It's hard to manipulate that. Let's see. Sultan says, wealthy actors hoarding assets like real estate, stocks, gold, and other financial instruments rather than using them in ways to boost broader economic participation. So yes, do tax, what was it? Do tax the rich. Do tax the rich, not work. Yeah. But then there comes a time of how much tax is too much tax. And really, there's that line. And I think it's up to each country and the people of that country to make that decision of what is fair when it comes to taxes. Personally, I like the fair tax thing to where if I'm Bill Gates and I go get a hamburger, I'm paying 10%. And if I'm Joe Blow, just me, myself, I buy a hamburger, I pay 10%. Other countries tax on brand new items that are purchased. So it doesn't matter on whether you're rich or poor. If it's a brand new item, you're going to get taxed on it, the same amount. The problem is that we're getting to the place of taxation, like in Colorado. Personal experience, which I know is anecdotal, but when you get to the point of where you have governments, city and county governments that are taxing for vehicle registration, and it keeps going up every single year, eventually you get to the point of where people are driving around with no registration because they can't afford it. And so, that's an extreme example, but there needs to be a level of equal tax. And I think the fair tax, in my opinion, would be the best way. If you look up fair tax or you look up flat tax and you look at some of the projections and the models and things like that, that was really eye-opening. And then compare that to, of course, the GAO and look at the budget that we have and kind of, knock down a couple of zeros. It really, let me see if I can find that. Compared to household budget. And this was really a thing right here. If I can find it, where is it? Here it is. And this is the thing, and of course, again, it's kind of related back to budget. Federal budget and pictures, U.S. budget versus a family budget based on 2024. Median family income is $80,000. If a family spent money like the federal government, it would be $110,000 per year, which means it would have to put $30,000 on the credit card, despite already being $564,000 in debt. So, yeah, that's what I'm talking about right there. The U.S. budget versus a family budget. So, if we operated the way that the federal government runs their budget, we would all be in debt. And it is just like, it doesn't compute because you have more going out than you have coming in. And so if the answer is to just raise taxes, the problem is you'll never raise enough to pay this off. no matter how much you pay in taxes. And the rates that you're going to be paying on that, we're at the point now where you can't even pay off the principal of the debt that we owe. So if you've ever seen that thing where it says, well, how much is $1 trillion? $1 trillion is, if I paid you $1 per second, how long would it take to pay off that $1 trillion? It would take 33,000 years. The thing is, that's not even counting the interest that we have that gets, they do another loan and they wrap that rent of what we own, the interest and the principal, and they wrap that together and they get another loan to cover all that. And so then you have more interest on that. And it's physically impossible to balance the budget. So kind of going back to that, the family budget versus government budget thing, this is non-sustainable. And if I ran my family budget like this over here, I would be toast. And unfortunately, on a macro scale, I think we're going to be toast too. Let's see. Trickle-down economics has not worked ever. All the additional funds lead to big stock buybacks and more money for stakeholders. If profits are not taxed, there is no incentive to increase pay. Yeah, and I agree. The trickle-down economics of Reagan, the Reagan administration back then, that was kind of the thing, and that worked to some point. But then I think that morphed into, and that changed, and that's why that doesn't work, because companies and corporations, people in general, try to find ways to not pay taxes, and if that's at the point of where it's more important to not pay taxes than pay and increase the workers, you're going to get that. So I totally agree with that. Let's see. Sultan says Trump et al. Are doing the opposite of that. And he is doing some stuff more business-minded. Tariffs are taxes. You can call them tariffs, but it's a flat tax on everything. That's true. Absolutely true. When you say taxes, in my mind, that's saying taxes that a U.S. citizen would pay. That's the first thing that comes to mind if we're talking about that. But since you're defining that as it is a tax, a tariff, it just identifies that income or that revenue stream that is coming in, which is a different category. So, for example, in my home budget, I got my military retirement. I have some other funds that come in that, even though it's income, it's a different income and it's a different subcategory of income. So I've got a pension, I've got this investment, I got that investment. Those are subcategories that, some of those things have different tax considerations when I do my taxes. So that's how I differentiate those things. But for me, taxes, when you say tax, that means, to me, the first thing that comes to mind is the personal taxes that people or businesses pay. When you say tariff, it kind of identifies the category of, yes, technically it is a tax, or a fee, for goods and services. They call it, and the strange thing is here in Korea, it's an import fee. Other countries will call it a value-added tax. So it can be seen as both ways. I totally get that and I accept that. Nobody wants to raise taxes on Social Security. What they're proposing is remove the contribution cap everyone who pays their income taxes. That would fund Social Security indefinitely, immediately. Where's that? Let me see. Nobody wants to raise taxes on Social Security. Well, then why did the Democrats vote to raise, to install taxes off of Social Security? that was a doozy. Yeah, we care for our seniors and those on Social Security. And then right after that, they tax Social Security, which is, really? I don't know. But let's see. What they're proposing is to remove the contribution cap everyone pays in their income taxes that would fund Social Security. So you're talking about individuals would be able to donate more money towards their Social Security? Or are you talking about the companies that they work, if somebody works for a company, that the company is going to pay more on their end for the Social Security? I'm not getting that. But then again, I haven't had coffee yet either. And I would fund Social Security immediately, indefinitely, immediately. Immediately, indefinitely, immediately. A flat tax would be a huge transfer of wealth to the top because everyone in the lower 90% would see an increase and everybody in the top 10% would get a big cut. Yeah, that makes sense. I could see that. But then again, if you look at the flat tax thing, you'd have to do a side-by-side comparison of a flat tax and the numbers on that. And I did that a long time ago. And at the time, it made sense, but that was a long time ago. But that's interesting. I'd have to look that up again. The problem isn't just low growth. It's that asset ownership has become the dominant driver of returns, sidelining productive activity, and a broad-based access. I meant, the last part, I meant to say tax, wealth, not work. Ah. But then where's the line? Because if we see our government as this ever growing, and if you look at how much our government has grown and how much money that it spends, and we're now into the obscene amounts of money. When you're talking about a total tax debt of, $30 trillion? And look what it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. It has grown exponentially. It is insane. If you did that on your own personal budget, there's no way. You would be insolvent. The thing is that our currency is based off of fiat. It's not based off of gold and silver like it was back in the 60s, and Nixon took us off the gold standard, silver standard, and so on and so forth. So it became a fiat currency. The only confidence that we have in the dollar is that we are indeed consumers. And then the whole deal of, the U.S. dollar being the world reserve currency for any buying and selling of petroleum and oil and so on and so forth. That whole deal there. Who's going to be the next world reserve currency? That is going to be an interesting thing because there's a collection of countries that have tried to do that. It hasn't worked out well. But now we have this cryptocurrency thing that is popping in, and that's on the radar, and that's making me, wow, that is going to be interesting. Let's see. Faritha says, now you pay Social Security taxes in your income tax, but there is a maximum contribution per year, the cap. No matter how much you make, remove that, and Social Security contributions would fund it indefinitely. So, removing the cap, are you saying that's a voluntary cap? Or are you saying that the tax for Social Security would be increased and there would be no cap? I kind of see what you're saying here. There's a maximum contribution per year. Yeah, you have to earn so much money, so many quarters per year. I get that. But the cap is interesting. Interesting. I wish we could sit in a coffee shop and talk. All of us get together. That would be so. Veritas, you need to get a plane ticket to come to Korea, and we'll sit down and we'll have coffee and we'll fix all the world's problems. But there are other ways, and I think like Faritha says, there's other ways in which to fix problems, and we need to think outside the box. I think the current box that we're in, the paradigm that we have in regards to our two-party government system that is woefully in debt and can never get out of debt. I mean, seriously, if you're 30 some odd trillion dollars in debt, can you truly balance the budget? No way. They're just kicking the can down the road. It is impossible to pay off that amount of hell. It's impossible to pay off the interest just on that debt. It is physically impossible. It will never happen. So that just begs the question of, balancing the budget. We need to, each side says that they want to balance the budget in whichever way, way that they deem is the best way. But in reality, you're never going to balance a budget because your debt far outweighs anything, any amount of income or any amount of taxes. You could raise 100% tax on everybody and everything, and that would be in a drop in the bucket in regards to the debt that we owe. It is physically impossible. Like I said, $1 per second, that would come out to 33,000 years if you do the math. And if we multiply 33,000 years by $30 trillion in debt, oh my God, there's no way you can balance a budget. Normal people, again, taking this down to a household budget, if your debt far exceeds, you would be going through bankruptcy. I've been through bankruptcy. I've been through foreclosures. Failed real estate business because family screwed me. That was so much fun. And fought tooth and nail to get out of that. Holy crow. And, had to restart and redo everything. But, that pales in comparison to the amount of debt that our government has. I mean, and every government has debt. The problem is that we've put ourselves into this position, and I don't think there's a way to get out of it. But the fact that we cannot pay, whether you're right, left, or independent like myself, you can't just shut down the government. Try shutting down your personal home budget and say, well, I'm not going to pay my rent, my utilities, my gas, my electricity, water, trash, food, the kid that I hired to do my lawn or whatever. I'm just not going to pay anybody because we got some, one side or the other has some different spending ideas, so we can't agree to even pay the necessities. They created that paradigm. And too many people are sticking to that. Yeah. Veritha says, you pay Social Security tax on your income, but there is a cap. You cannot contribute more than that. So someone making 150 will pay the same amount for the total Social Security tax as someone making 10 million. Okay, yeah. But then on the Social Security, the whole thing with Social Security is a wash because it's crazy. It's kind of like, here, you're going to invest X amount of money through taxing, whether you have with the current system that has that cap, which it does. And then this is the amount that you're going to get when you finally retire and hit Social Security age. Numerous people on both the left and right and in between and, have shown that if you just took that same amount of money and put it into the stock market, just general stock market, you would make, the average person would make, I've seen estimates anywhere from 2, 3, up to $8 or $9 million. Of course, depending on how much, and again, kind of like what you said, depending on how much you make. I think those caps in that aspect, if we had a general fund that went straight to the stock market, you would be way better off than making, after working 40 years, and you're only going to get $1,200 a month. Those returns are abysmal. It is insane that this is even a thing. Now, way back in the day when Social Security came out, it might have seemed like a good idea, but I don't think they had the forethought to look forward way down the road and say, okay, well, how is this going to play out? No, I don't think they did that. It's just absolutely insane. But yeah, that whole thing, yeah, the cap is wrong, but you're still playing within that system that is destined to fail. Why not invest it in the market? In super safe returns, 20, 30, 30, 40 years, you'd have at least $2-3 million compared to, the average is like what, 2,000, I think it was like 2,100 a month. Let me see if I can. $2,200 a month times 12, and that's $26,000 a year for Social Security. Compared to, let's say you make $1 million, you've invested it, it's been invested, so the money that you would pay towards Social Security and put that into the market, and after 40 years, you would have $1 million, and then, some of the estimates that I saw, get like a 5% return, that's 50 grand right there. So you're making double. And that's just 5% return on $1 million. So why are we doing Social Security? It doesn't make sense. Let's see, what else are we talking about? Government debt isn't like household debt. Governments that issue their own currency, like the UK, can create money that pay their own, to pay what they owe. Dang it. The real constraint isn't running out of money. I gotta disagree. You can issue your own currency, but it used to be that you could issue your own currency, true, but it was based off of gold and silver, things that actually had intrinsic value, tangible value, with the rest of the world. The problem is with the fiat currency system, it's based off of confidence, and that's it. There's nothing solid backing it. And we've seen another companies or countries go through that. Just because you can print your own money doesn't mean that fixes the problem. We've seen another number of countries that have, the Weimar Republic and so on and so forth, the whole story of the wheelbarrows full of money to buy bread. Just because you can print it, again, there's a thing of devaluation. The more you print, you're going to devalue the money, which goes back to the US dollar that used to be based off of gold and silver, has been devalued like what, 96, 97%? And the majority of that came after getting off the gold and silver standard. So the more money you print, the less purchasing power that you have. And then, yeah, it's just rough. Anyways, just my stupid 2 cents. No, it's not stupid. Not stupid. How dare you say that? Social Security could have been that. There is a trust that was meant to do that, but it was never adjusted. So we're paying Social Security taxes to retirees immediately, not investing them. Responsible is that cap. And that's true, but I think the inherent system, when it was established, and again, the first person that got Social Security just paid a few months into it and then got money for the rest of their life. It was a Ponzi scheme because it's dependent upon the population being taxed to pay for the people that were on Social Security at that time. And then, like for us, when we get Social Security, it'll be based off the people that are going to be working, and you raise those taxes. So, like I said in a previous video, if you phased that out and said, okay, people on this date, the money, instead of, it's actually going to go into a stock fund, general stock fund, and after 30, 40 years, you're going to get that. You're going to get millions of dollars. And to phase out the Social Security system, the regular system that we have now, you could easily fade that out. And then you don't even have to, you have more safety, and you would have better returns off of doing that than saying we need to raise taxes on a system that is a Ponzi scheme that is based off of population. And if the population is upside down, now you're in a place where you have to raise taxes, and it's just very problematic. But I think that paradigm is what the politicians want us to stick with. Oh, there's no other way to fix this. Yeah, there is. You just don't want to do it because you can't. The thing is, politicians, both on the left and right, borrowed from Social Security and never paid it back. They gave IOUs, but they never paid it back. So they took out of the Social Security fund, and then that contributed to the crappiness of what we have now. But yeah, the cap is a thing. And I think if you remove the cap, here's an idea. You remove the cap on Social Security, then you phase it into investing in the stock market, and those two things combined, boom, you would be mad. They would be making mad money. It would never, you wouldn't have to fund social, have to do what we're doing now. One estimate I saw said $5.3 million. So let's just make it $5 million. And at a 7% return, at $350,000 a year. And yet, We're sticking with an antiquated social security system that is based off of something from the 1920s and 30s. It is just so. It's kind of like comparing the Wright brothers with a supersonic jet. It's why are we even doing that? We have so many better things that we could do. Faritha says, yes, it would be nice to chat sometime. You should host a Discord coffee table sometime where people can join. Says, all right, time for my workout. Enjoy your day, Steve. Yes, that would be cool. Working out is good. Staying healthy. Thanks for watching. I appreciate that. Great insight, by the way. Great insight. I appreciate that. Sultan says, I'm listening while working out at home and replying between sets. The old man life. Yeah, that would be, when I work out, I am on it. I guess I could do that, but I'm kind of a linear type of person where I do one thing, that's what I'm focused on. And so even between sets, I'm focused on, because I work hard. And so if I did that, I would be useless because I work really hard when I work out. Maybe I need to step back because I am getting older. I'm 59. Maybe I need to step down a little bit on my workouts. But Sultan, he's the man. He's multitasking. He's on it. So I guess I could learn to do that. If Sultan can do it, I could probably do it. But it would be weird because the gym that I go to is on a military base and they don't allow cameras. So that's the one good thing about it is we don't have these fitness influencers doing whole production things and pissing people off with, we don't have that. So you can take pictures, but if there's somebody in the background, you got to let them know. And so people just no cameras. It's just kind of a thing. You can still find a place where you find a mirror and do some progress pictures or whatever. But yeah, the whole influencer gym nut jobs that you got going on, yeah, which I really, really like. I'm glad that we don't have to deal with that in the gym that we go to on the military bases. And there's a dress code. So you don't have people walking around without shirts and so on and so forth. For some reason, it's just I've been to gyms where the guys are shirts off and, it's just, film. The other thing that gets me is filming in the bathrooms, in the changing and locker rooms while people are walking around, getting showers or whatever. Yeah, that's not cool. I definitely, if nobody's around, that's not a problem. But if there's people in the background of the locker room while you're doing your posing thing and I'm changing, I'm just waiting for that. I'm waiting for some idiot to do that, and I'm going to walk up in the full Monty and say, hey, there's no cameras here. It's against the rules because people like me changing clothes and I'm naked. Yeah, that would, just waiting for that day to happen. Yeah. George says, sorry, I haven't been chatting. I've been cooking chili. Chili's good. I'm not going to fault you for the chili. That's what we should do. Maybe we all get together. George makes chili. We have Therapist, Sultan comes down, and we all meet and we have a barbecue and stuff like that. And then we go to a coffee shop and do a round table thing and have some good lattes and maybe a little bit of cheesecake, little pastry action going on, and we could just have a fun time. I think that would be cool. Maybe we could create our own government. Fix everything. But it's kind of the same thing. There's just so much that you could do, and as I get older, there's other ways to skin a cat. And I think a lot of times we're stuck in a paradigm or a mentality that doesn't allow us to go beyond and think outside the box. Yeah, it's just absolutely crazy. Talking about crazy, you want to hear some other crazy stuff? we're going to talk about some other crazy stuff. We're going to talk about this guy, the stabbing over a 70-cent lottery ticket. Yeah, it's a thing. Here it is. A man detained for fatal stabbing at restaurant over 70-cent lottery ticket dispute. Seriously? 70 cents? We're going to stab somebody? A man in his 60s was detained Sunday after fatally stabbing a restaurant owner and injuring her husband in Gyeongbu, northern Seoul. So be careful. Following a dispute over a 1,000 won promotional lottery ticket. According to the police, the suspect attacked the couple who ran the restaurant, also in their 60s, around 2 p.m. after they refused to give him a lottery ticket intended for customers paying in cash. The restaurant, which opened in July, has been distributing the tickets as part of a promotion. The suspect reportedly visited the restaurant on Saturday, paid with a credit card, was told that only cash payments were eligible. Reading the small fine print. He returned the next day and paid in cash, but the owners again declined, explaining that the tickets were not issued on Sundays as the lottery draw had taken place the day prior. So again, somebody doesn't like reading the small print. Enraged, the suspect allegedly pulled out a knife. I don't know if somebody got stabbed and killed, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's not allegedly. From his pocket and stabbed both the owners. Security footage showed the couple fleeing the restaurant as a man chased them with a knife. A bystander intervened and kicked the weapon out of the suspect's hand. They were rushed to hospitals. The wife was pronounced dead Monday. Her husband remains in critical condition. Witnesses told social media the suspect appeared to be intoxicated. Police are expected to request an arrest warrant for the suspect later Monday on charges of murder and attempted. What? Did I read that right? So this happened on Sunday. He stabbed them. Apparently he went away. Monday, one of them passed, one in critical conditions, and police are expected to request an arrest warrant for the suspect later Monday on charges of murder and attempted murder. Later on Monday. Later? Really? Later. Why later? I don't get that. Later on Monday. He should have been picked up on Sunday. That's all I'm saying. And you had witnesses. And you had the guy, the bystander, that kicked the weapon out of the suspect's hand. And you're waiting until Monday to request the arrest warrant? So that's not... In the Korean legal system, you have to go and do a police report. Then the police does their little thing, and then they get a warrant issued, and then that's going to take some time. But this is just, they're expected to request an arrest warrant because it has to go to the prosecutor's office, and then they have to determine whether it's, a viable charge and so on and so forth. But he unalived somebody. He tried to unalive two people. He was caught in the act. He was disarmed, and yet Monday, we're going to request a warrant to go pick him up. On Monday. That's just a request for the warrant. Why are we not picking him up? That is insane. Holy crow. So I guess the lesson of the day is read the fine print and be careful. That is crazy. Get so mad that you're going to go ruin, you're going to end the lives of, basically you wanted to end the life of two people. You definitely did it with one, over 70 cents, 60, 70 cents. Wow, that is insane. Now the good thing is, this is really rare in Korea. It is really rare. Crime rates are really low in Korea, but we still get some crazy people. Crazy people are everywhere. But that is just insane. That, yeah, Monday, they're expected to request the arrest warrant for the suspect later Monday. That's not even, we're going to go pick him up Monday. It's probably going to be after Monday. I don't get that at all. Crazy. And since we're talking about crime, very interesting, we're going to talk about the Korean Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was a serial killer in the United States, pretty horrendous guy. Crazy. But we got some of that crazy stuff here in Korea. So, according to this article from the Korea Jong-un Daily, we're going to get into that. Sultan pops up and says, Steve, trust me, you don't want to do my workout. It's so lame, even my cats can't keep a straight face. But you're working out. You're doing way more than the people who don't even show up. So kudos to you. The hunt for a serial killer. Korea's Ted Bundy, a rare combo of charm and pure evil. And there it is. He stares at the camera during excavation work and blah, blah, blah. Here's the other thing that I don't get about Korea. Korea will have people that will do scams, the corruption, crimes, all kinds of stuff. And as they're being led out and the cameras are looking, the news crews will blur out the face of that individual, but you can see everybody else. You can see the victims, you can see everybody else. Even people that commit serious and violent crimes, they'll blur the face out of that individual, which I don't understand. You should be blurring out the victims' faces and show us who this jackwagon is. But it's just the way they do it. This guy ended up, in 2006, a black SUV pulled up in front of Yoon, a 23-year-old public servant waiting for a bus at an empty bus stop in Jongseon County, Gangwon. Handsome driver offered her a ride. She never made it home. And it ends up this guy, she vanished. Her family began a wild search for the next 3 years. In 2009, her bones were found beneath a cliff in Yeongwol County, Gangwon. The man revealed behind Yoon's death was this 38-year-old animal farmer, Kang Ho-sun, who had been called Korea's Ted Bundy, a notorious serial killer, confessed to at least 30 murders, and allegedly killed more than 100 people. That is insane. And here, the guy, that's him there. Of course, they blur him all out. I don't understand why. Reenacts the scene of murdering a female college student in his car. Seriously, we're going to blur his face out. In December 2006, about 3 months after, Kang was on to his next target, using his clear-cut appearance to his advantage. The 45-year-old karaoke hostess went out with Kang, and he asked for a second round of drinks. The hostess stepped into his car, not knowing it would be a death trap. Kang had relations with her and strangled her with a necktie. Then he buried her body in a road in Hwasong, in Gyeonggi-do. He remained unfazed. 10 days later, he targeted a 36-year-old karaoke hostess, used the same scheme, strangled the victim. The intervals between subsequent murders became shorter and shorter. 3 more murders happened in 4 days between January 3rd and 7th. Victims were a 52-year-old office worker, park hostess, 20-year-old college student, and there he is right there. So they finally didn't blur his face, finally. Well, I believe the V-blur. Yeah, the victim blur. Then he paused in his killings, and they resumed murders in 2008. He got a Equus sedan. He had a 7th victim. Another college student became the 8th. They were discovered in 2009. All their fingers had been sheared off because they might have had his DNA. It's just crazy. His crime pattern was women, bus stops, or karaoke, and strangling. He's cunning enough to read the women's thoughts, especially on how they would react being approached by an unknown man. He knew how to bend their wariness and win their trust. At bus stops, he lowered the driver and passenger windows, allowing victims to glance in his car. He also displayed a photo of himself with a dog on a dashboard, a move to project an image of a dog-loving man. When the victim hesitated to board his car, he smiled, "Do I look like a bad person? I have a dog." The 5 victims killed between 2006 and 2007, 4 of them were raped or had those type of assaults before their deaths. All 8 unacquainted victims died of suffocation. Later, they were buried, used a pickaxe, and yet there's blood stains of 2 unidentified women on the pickaxe that did not match the DNA of the murders. And yeah, he continued. Crazy. He used their credit cards. His freedom didn't last long. He was spotted. Series of murders, the 8th and final confession of the murder of an office worker. He's a good-looking guy, but crazy. Sultan says, "No blurring for somebody already convicted, but yes, but not before. Otherwise, you're in Judge Dredd territory." Yeah, I can see that. I kind of get that. But then they have other things where people have been in the Korean news, and you've probably seen this, where somebody has already been convicted, and then they're going for other trials, for other charges, and so on and so forth. And so they're already guilty on a number of crimes, and they'll still blur their face out. So, yeah, it just bugs me. I don't know. So that's him right there. He lived a dual life. His neighbor said he was great. He was obsessed with women. Imagine that. Well-behaved man, polite, clean-cut appearance, likable character. And it ends up that his ability to charm women, set fire to home to kill his wife and his mother-in-law. That's crazy. But the fire killed his 4th wife. He had 3 divorces before his 4th marriage, and his mother-in-law. He later received $480 million in the wife's insurance policies, or $340,000. He ran a dog farm with Siberian Huskies, and that's the picture of him and his dog. He rarely fed them. He brutally killed them by strangling them. Crazy. That is insane. He says, and he actually said, "Because I killed so many dogs, killing a human being felt like nothing at all." So there is something to be said about desensitization, being desensitized through doing something like that. He was sentenced to death in Suwon in April 2009. Despite his appeal, they upheld the death penalty. He became the 60th person on death row. However, he's still alive today because Korea has not executed one since 1997. Yeah. That is, I don't know. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. So, yeah, every country has their own problems. They have their own criminals, and thankfully here in Korea you don't have as many, but still the loss of life is sad, that this happens. But yeah, it's just kind of crazy. So stuff like that is just unfortunate, that you have, no matter what country that you're in, that you will get some criminals like this, people that their moral compass is broken, it's gone, they never had one to begin with, something's not clicking in their brain, and it doesn't matter if they had the death penalty and were actively carrying out those sentences as a deterrent. For most normal people, you'd be like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that because they have the death penalty. But after working in prisons for over 11 years in the United States, there was people that I knew that, they didn't care. They didn't care. Absolutely didn't care if you had the death penalty or not. So, and I have talked to inmates that left states in the United States that had the death penalty and were actively punishing using that, and they would go to states where they didn't have the death penalty. So there's that. They do migrate. They do migrate. Criminals do migrate. So it is crazy. So that's why I'm kind of hard on crime. I like being hard on crime and hard on criminals because it is an actual deterrent. But I'm also, on the other hand, I'm also a big fan of rehabilitation. And Colorado, even Colorado probably has some of the best rehabilitation programs within their prison system of the majority of states in the United States. We would have other states and their correctional officers and management teams come to Colorado and attend, tours and showing them what we would do here in Colorado or what we did in Colorado, and they would try to do those same thing in their states. But the recidivism rate in Colorado is still around 50% within that certain time frame, and I can't remember what the time frame is. But if you go past that time frame, it's more like 60, 70%, So, and recidivism is people get convicted of a crime, they go to prison, which you have to do a lot of bad stuff to go to prison, and then they get out, and then they come back into prison because they committed another crime and caught another case. So, it's within that certain time frame, it's 50%, but in reality, it's more like 60, 70, more closer to 70%. So even though the amount of rehabilitative programs that we had in Colorado, which was probably, I'd say, the best in the United States, your recidivism rate is still, it pales. It's just not effective because some people just plainly don't want to rehabilitate. They don't want to be a good citizen. They don't want to have good morals. They don't care that their moral compass is all jacked up. And it is just very eye-opening working in the prison system. For so many years, I worked in 2 medium-hour prisons. Again, Territorial Correctional Facility and Fremont Correctional Facility. Very, very interesting. And seeing the wide array of criminals, everything from murder to grapes to, eggs assault. So that way it doesn't piss off the YouTube, whatever. But it is, there's just those people, when you get to that level, there's people that just don't care. They don't have the same morals and ethics that normal people like you and I have. So it is very, very interesting. And no amount of rehabilitation is going to change that. It's just a fact of life. And you could say, well, these people are mentally disturbed or whatever. Some of them are. But I don't think that excuses the actions that they do, that they choose to do. And it is what it is. It's just some people don't care. Kind of like that guy that we're talking about there, the Korean Ted Bundy. What was his name? Yun? Kang Ho Sun. Yeah. Some people just don't care. Some people just want to see the world burn. And if you got that reference, you get a gold star for the Batman reference. Which I think Heath Ledger is the greatest Batman villain ever. Greatest Joker ever. Though I do say Jared Leto would be, he's a good Joker, but I just think he got screwed because the stories weren't good. So I think he could be a good Joker, but Heath Ledger is really good. And who's that other guy that did the recent Joker? Joaquin Phoenix? Is that his name? Joker actors. Jared Leto was one. Joaquin Phoenix. His Joker, the first Joker movie, I think I like that. It was vastly different, and I think that's why a lot of people probably didn't like him because it was vastly different after the incredible performance that Heath Ledger did. But it was still a good story, and I think the second movie, if they had a great story, they could have nailed it and develop that character even more, so it would probably be almost on the same level. But they went with the singing and the dancing and the thing that nobody wanted to see. So that was it. Jared Leto, I think he was a good one too. I think he just kind of got screwed out of the deal. It was a bad story. So anyway, yeah, it just what do you do? What do you do? Sultan says, sorry, Steve. Got to move to my second ritual of the day. Go work from a cafe. I love living, working here. Thank you for your videos. You made my day. Well, thank you for that. Enjoy your day at work. Yeah, cool. And a cafe. I love coffee. So love what you do. With that, I think since he's got to go, and I'm going to go too, because it's 9:25 right now, and I got to get some breakfast. Talking about a cafe, I'm a little hungry as well. So even though we didn't solve the world's problems, and we looked at some of the things like Trump protests here in Korea, pro or con, they happen. Don't stab anybody for 70 cents on a discount ticket in a restaurant. Don't do that. And the Korean Ted Bundy was pretty interesting, and we kind of closed it up with, Heath Ledger being the best Joker ever, and Joaquin Phoenix and Jared Leto, they could have been better, but I think they got screwed by the writers. So, yeah, it is what it is. So, anyway, with that being said, appreciate it. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. That would really, really help the channel. And being retired here in Korea, I can talk about some of these things and kind of give some insight into my life and what we do besides the 3D printing and painting and miniatures. Just kind of open up and show the differences and get to meet cool people like Sultan and Ferrithus and George and a number of other people, and having these cool discussions, on how we can fix our government, Sparky and all that, Sparky's and Soul. So, yeah, enjoy your time, ladies and gentlemen, and we will see you on the next video. And the obligatory outro, here it is. So if you want to contact me, email me just to say hi or whatever. I always answer my emails, so there's the email address. If you want to buy me coffee, not there, but there is a bunch of people who have bought me coffee. If you can't do it in person. And then, yeah, it is what it is. But the best thing you could do, if you don't buy coffee, that's absolutely cool. You can just like the video and subscribe. Sultan comes back and says, oh, I agree 100% with your opinion on the Joker. See you. See ya. Peace. Great show. Love it.